Keller, okay, I think she's kicking us over. Okay, welcome everybody. We are going to give it a few more seconds here as we get prepared. Happy Wednesday to you all. Okay, I know we're a few minutes after the top of the hour and we have a full agenda, so I'm going to get us started here. My name is Michael Jarris. I'm a coordinator of government relations here at Main Street America, and I'm really excited to have a great panel of speakers today. A few folks from U.S. Department of Transportation, and we have a couple folks who have been working on implementing some federal grants that we're going to talk about today. So can't wait to hear from Danielle and Andrea on a little bit of the implementation of those grants. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So we are here to talk about federal funding opportunities for Main Streets. Specifically, we're talking about two programs today, the Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program and the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Program. I'll be referring to them as RCP and RAISE for short, as they're both quite a mouthful. So who are we? I know many of you all are joining as local program directors and managers of Main Street programs. So many of you already know this, but Main Street America leads a movement committed to strengthening communities through preservation-based economic development in older and historic downtowns and neighborhood commercial districts. So we are a national network of more than 1,600 grassroots organizations and also 46 state, county, and city level coordinating programs. We're united by a commitment of fostering strong local economies and enhancing the distinctive character that makes communities attractive to residents, visitors, and businesses. So what are we doing today? As I already gave a really quick preview on, we are going to be talking with a few representatives from Department of Transportation and a few folks that have been on the ground implementing some of these grants. We know that there are many federal opportunities to rebuild and improve critical infrastructure that can positively impact Main Street districts. So this webinar is bringing together some of those federal experts that have helped to administer the programs, both at the federal level and then take them at the local level. So we'll hear from two communities as well about their experience participating in the federal grants. That's Danielle Gibson from Decatur, Alabama, and we have Andrea Dono from Harrisonburg, Virginia. So I will let our panelist give a quick introduction, and I will start with you, Rob.
Hi. Apologies, it took me a little while to find my mute button there. My name is Rob Hyman from the U.S. Department of Transportation. I lead the Roots Initiative there, which is our rural initiative. It's a long acronym that stands for Rural Opportunities to Use Transportation for Economic Success. We won't be quizzing you on that. Our goal is really to help connect rural communities to the grants and resources that the department has to offer. And we're very pleased to be here with you.
Great. Thank you, Rob. And I will pass the mic over to Chris.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Riesenberg. I'm with the Office of the Secretary of Transportation, and I am one of the program leads for the Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Michael.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And we have another representative from Department of Transportation. That is Kim. I know, Kim, you're having some audio issues, but if you can come off mute and introduce yourself, that would be great. And give it a few more seconds. Okay, Kim, we can't hear you, but we are going to introduce the rest of our panelists, and hopefully we can solve those technical issues. Danielle, can I pass it over to you?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Gibson. I am the President CEO of Decatur Morgan County Tourism here in Decatur, Alabama. And we work very closely with our Main Street program. So excited to talk a little bit more about our project.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. And last but not least, Andrea, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Dono. I'm the Executive Director of Harrisonburg Downtown Renaissance. We're the accredited Main Street program in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and we are working through a RAISE grant right now.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Andrea. So I am going to go over a quick review of the agenda, and then I'm going to pass it over to our speakers with us today. So first, we're going to review two of the two grants. The first is the Reconnecting Communities Pilot grant program. Chris will offer the overview of that. Then we'll do an overview of the RAISE program, and that will be led, if Kim is off or has audio working, we'll have it led by Kim, but if not, her colleague Rob will give us some remarks there. And then we're going to move into a spotlight with Danielle and Andrea about taking each of those grant opportunities and using them in their communities. We also want to give an opportunity for you all that are joining us on the webinar today to ask questions for anyone who's on the panel today. So I'm going to hopefully move through my parts as quick as I can so that we can give you all as much time as possible to ask questions. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Chris, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can speak about the program.
Yes. Let me work on my screen share here. So today I am going to not give you, death by PowerPoint. I'm just going to kind of get some highlights from our website. And if you need more information, I will drop the link for our website in the chat when I get done. And you can dive on in. There's plenty of information. The page I have up now is we've just got done with a whole bunch of outreach webinars on the Reconnecting Communities Pilot program. And if you do want more information, we recorded those Zoom meetings that we did, Zoom webinars, and we have the slide deck up on the website. So for the highlights of the Reconnecting Communities Pilot program, I'm going to hit a different page here. We are currently in the midst of a notice of funding opportunity for the Reconnecting Communities Pilot program. The program was established in the bipartisan infrastructure law. We did a NOFO in fiscal year 20 for fiscal 22 funding and 23 funding. We are currently in our current NOFO is for 3 fiscal years, fiscal year 2024, 25, and 26. And we're doing that combined NOFO, which includes funding available for planning and construction. I think the kind of the crux or the high level perspective of the program is this question here is, what is an eligible facility? Really, the Reconnecting Communities program is about removing barriers to community connectivity. Those barriers are the eligible facilities. Those are roads, streets, parkways, or rail lines that create barriers in a community. And typically those barriers are either like high speeds, wide lanes, grade separations, bridges, things along those lines that cause access issues for people to get around the community. There's different scales for the types of grants that we have. Some of the grants are things such as removing a freeway. We also have we didn't have many this last go around on removing freeway type facilities. We had quite a few that built caps or lids over freeways. But I think the great majority of our grants were projects that were kind of complete streets, that we had facilities that were kind of over-designed, a little too big, and that needed to either add different modal facilities or reduce lanes, things along those lines that help the community have access to daily destinations. With this, it's a little bit unique, our program. We do have nonprofits that are eligible for our planning grants, along with states, local governments, tribes, and metropolitan planning organizations for the planning grants. For construction grants, we have, it's kind of a similar eligibility, but since the program's focused on reducing those barriers, the eligible applicant must partner with the facility owner, which is a lot of times the state DOT that had built either a freeway or the large facility, or if it is a city or a railroad that creates the barrier, the applicant must partner with them. With that, that's kind of the high level of our program. With that, the NOFO closes at the end of this month, and then we get into the application review process. I think we're planning on an award announcement in January or February of next year. It takes a little while to get through the review of the applications. We do have a lot. I mean, the last 2 years, I think we had about triple the applications to the amount of funding we had to award. So it's very competitive. With that, I will pass it back and stop sharing for now.
Great, thank you, Chris. And to reiterate to all of our participants today on the call, the deadline for that NOFO is September 30th. So that's coming up quite soon. And perhaps, Rob, Chris, when we get into the question and answer section, if you could also maybe describe the RCI as well and a little bit about what that is, that would be great. But for now, I will pass it over to Kim. It sounds like you might be able to speak at this point.
Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Yes, okay, beautiful. All right, sorry for the tech issues. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Kim Bathrick. I work on the RAISE grants team here at the USDOT. I'm happy to talk to you guys about the RAISE program. This is actually one of the department's longest standing discretionary grant programs, and we just wrapped up our 16th round. And so just want to give a high-level overview about our grant program, the types of things we can fund, and then talk a little bit about our 2025 upcoming NOFO competition. So with that, the RAISE grant program, we can fund both capital construction projects and planning projects that will have a local or regional significance when it comes to surface transportation infrastructure. We can fund a variety of eligible applicant types, and this is kind of one of the key hallmarks about our program is not only can we fund state DOTs and tribes and the like, we can also fund cities and counties and local jurisdictions like MPOs or transit agencies. So that really garners a lot of attention from folks across the country and really is a pretty appealing aspect of our program. When it comes to project types, we also cast a pretty wide net in terms of who's eligible. So we can, or the types of projects that are eligible, we fund roads, highways, bridges, public transit, port projects, intermodal projects, rail projects, you name it. So anything that's really surface transportation in nature is typically eligible for RAISE. And certainly for folks like you, some of those complete streets, corridors, bike ped is a huge component of the types of projects that we can fund, and have been funding a lot of types of projects along those lines in the last several rounds especially. Couple of key features of our program and some data for you. So the funding that's available right now is $1.5 billion each year through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law up through 2026. So we just awarded our 2024 round in June of this year, and then we'll be looking to move into our 2025 round. So each year we have at least $1.5 billion available, and sometimes we actually get a little bit more from Congress in their appropriations. So that's a lot of money, but we definitely tend to be very oversubscribed, and it makes for a good competitive application process. Now, I know some things that folks are often wondering is, how much can I apply for? Are there any stipulations on the funding request? And for RAISE, we have $1 million is the minimum request amount for a rural capital project, and $5 million for urban areas. So it kind of depends on where you're located. But for planning projects, there is no minimum award size. You can request as little as makes sense for the planning efforts that are taking place. And then we do have a $25 million maximum award size. So really a variety of project types in nature, depending on what type of enhancements and improvements your community is looking to incorporate. There's a lot of ways that it can fit well into the RAISE program. All right, now a couple of things that help make a RAISE grant compete well. As I said, it is a very competitive discretionary grant program, one of the longest standing in the department. So there's a couple of things that we really look for when we're looking at applications and evaluating them based on the merits. So it's important that an applicant will clearly define what your transportation problem is that you're trying to solve, and more importantly, what are the solutions that you think will fix that problem, and how does that relate to our program and our goals and objectives? We really want to make sure you're telling your story about what the transportation challenges are, and then detailing any local, regional, or national impacts as a result of your project. Certainly, we want to make sure that projects are aligning with our merit criteria. We have 8 statutory merit criteria, so that means safety, environmental sustainability, quality of life, mobility and community connectivity is a huge one, state of good repair and partnership and innovation. All of those are our merit criteria, and we want to make sure that your application is doing a really thorough job of describing how your project is going to align with our program criteria. And then lastly, we also want to make sure that your project schedule, not only is it reasonable, but also it meets some of our congressionally mandated deadlines. So making sure that you're marrying up both the benefits of your project, the solutions to your transportation problems, along with some of the more finer details of what is your schedule, can you accomplish all of these things, and then in the time frame that's required. All right. So something else that's important too, we do take a look at your project budgets to make sure that any other funding that may be on your project is secured and ready to go. And then we also want to make sure that you, the applicant organization, can be successful if given a RAISE grant. And so we'd like to hear a little bit about what your technical capacity is like, and any experience or resources or expertise that you bring to the table to help ensure successful implementation. All right, and so I know I mentioned that we do have an upcoming 2025 competition, so just wanted to leave you with a few pieces of information on that. We are required to publish our next Notice of Funding Opportunity anytime between October 1 and November 30th. So we will be blasting that out through grants.gov, as well as on the RAISE Grants website. So more details to come there, definitely. And then also after we publish the NOFO, we like to host a bunch of webinars on how to apply, walking through our merit criteria, walking through the different stages of review so that applicants can feel like they're really equipped to handle and are prepared for what we're going to be looking for during the evaluation process. Congress does give us 270 days from October 1 to make award announcements. And so that means that awards, all the evaluations and everything will take place throughout after the NOFO gets published, and then awards will be made next summer. So with that, Michael, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Kim, and I'm glad you were able to connect to the audio. I know years into the remote world, we're all still trying to figure it out, and it is never easy. It's never walk in the park, so thank you. Kim already went into some of the tips for a successful application. I do want to offer some additional tips on behalf of Main Street America. I'm going to share my screen here. So as we heard, the RCP grant program, that application is due quite soon. And then on the contrary, the RAISE grant program, that next NOFO has not been published yet. So you have some more time there. But we definitely encourage you all to research the program to find the notice of funding opportunity. Obviously, right now, the RAISE program does not have that issued. And you can expect that the application deadline for the RAISE grants will be sometime in early 2025. And I think what you'll want to do is confirm that you're an eligible entity. But if you're not, don't worry. You can determine whether there's a partner in your community or somewhere adjacent that could be an eligible entity. And you'll want to identify what you want to submit as part of the application. I know many of you will have already filled out federal grant applications. Some of you may not have, and you might be surprised to see what is required and what is part of the application. So the earlier you can look at that, the better. And you'll really want to develop a work plan with your team to complete that application. Specifically, you'll also want to look at the compliance requirements. So what does it take to be a recipient, to be awarded that grant, and how will you have to comply with the requirements of the program? Something we hear a lot in the Main Street America community as well is about matching requirements. So make sure you're looking to see whether or not there is a matching requirement and what that might be, and if that's going to be feasible for you all to raise outside of the program. And then importantly, just kind of internal organization, thinking about designating someone as your point contact, and thinking about who is going to be the person in your organization or in your sphere to really lead the effort. And also be looking out for when you have to spend the funding that you are, if you are awarded, that you're awarded. For those of you who had joined at our last webinar, you'll already have heard this from me. So I might sound like a broken record, but collaboration is absolutely key here. With your organization, your partners, think about determining who the lead is, but the wider net you can cast with gathering those like-minded organization and folks, the more successful you can be in your application. And if you're a local program director or manager, I would encourage you to reach out to your state coordinator, ask their staff whether they know of details about the program, and also who in your state has been awarded in the past. They might have some tips and tricks or some lessons to share with you about past rounds, and also what you might need to know as a recipient for applying. And then finally, as you see here, you have folks at the federal level and there's folks at the state level that have a whole lot of knowledge to tap into. So I encourage you all to look in each of the federal grant programs at who the point contact is, and feel free to reach out via email to ask any questions you have about the program, about submitting an application, really anything there. And for example, I know Chris has already shared this in the chat, so I encourage you all to look at that. But there is, for the Reconnecting Communities Pilot program, there's a Reconnecting Communities Institute, and there's a couple of events that they're offering in the very near future. On September 13th, there's a session on, it's a grant writing clinic, and on September 16th, there's office hours. So I encourage you all, if you're interested in the RCP program, to go onto the RCP website, take a look at those, and the RCI website, take a look at those opportunities to engage and get your questions answered. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we are fortunate to have Danielle and Andrea with us, and I'm going to pass it over to each of you to talk about the federal programs that you were awarded. And Danielle, I'll start with you on the RCP grant in Alabama.
Great, thank you so much. So we are a destination marketing organization. So we are the sales and marketing arm for the city of Decatur. And so I was really a rookie at this whole federal grants process, but I'm going to kind of walk you through what did our program look like, how did we collaborate together, and then how did we ultimately get an award-winning grant. So the city of Decatur, in partnership with our organization, we applied for the Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant through the U.S. Department of Transportation, and ours was titled the Dr. Bill Sims Bikeway on the Singing River Trail, which would expand the existing Dr. Bill Sims Hike Bikeway by 8.7 miles along the riverfront and into our Old Town Decatur, providing safety, access, and streetscape improvements. This 8.77-mile trail project, it reconnects the historic, once thriving Black community of Old Town Decatur to essential destinations within the city and regionally to the Singing River Trail, which is a 220-mile collaborative effort spanning through North Alabama. Our area is located within the disadvantaged communities, many of which were harmed by the urban renewal efforts of the 1970s. So this project provides a high quality route for everyday active transportation, travel, and recreation. And the project builds upon the existing community-driven Dr. Bill Sims Bike Trail that currently lacks adequate dedicated space for comfortable and safe walking and biking. This project includes new shared use plans, streetscape improvements, separated bicycle lanes, sidewalks, and new streetscape elements by lighting and landscaping. And then finally, through robust community engagement and partnership and place-based economic development, the trail will play a key role in revitalizing the economy of the predominantly Black neighborhood of the Old Town Decatur. So like you guys just mentioned, collaboration was key on this effort, and we had to get it done in a really, really fast time period. I won't tell you what, because when I met with DOT in Washington, they were like, that just doesn't happen. So I'll tell you kind of how we walked through this process and how we got it done in such a fast manner. So I actually received, I think, the NOFO. I was probably part of the newsletter. And then after reading the opportunity, I was like, this is a perfect fit for us. So guess what? I got to be the champion of the initiative, which is always an exciting adventure. So I knew it would take a little bit of persuasion on my part, but because it would be a long shot because it was such a competitive grant. And since we were in the disadvantaged community and a large portion of it, then we had a no match grant for that. But I was on a mission because I felt like we really fit all of the check boxes for this initiative. So we had already been working with a consultant on the Singing River Trail project, and they had been working on our Dr. Bill Sims Trail as well. So we felt like that would be a really good fit for them to do all of our planning and putting it all together. So it took a lot of collaboration on many different parts. So you have to pay a consultant, so we had to get we had to think about how we were going to get the funding together in order to get the consultant. So we went to our Decatur Hospitality Association, who collects a $2 fee that is collected per room night. And then I went to my board as well and asked for them to put in funding so that we could put all of that money together to pay the consultant, and everybody agreed to that. And then also we had to think about forming a committee. So we put together a really powerhouse committee that was elected officials. It was our MPO. It was a lot of individuals from our Old Town district. We had a lot of different sectors that were involved in this project. And we actually put together a website as well when we got all of our documents put together, which talked about a lot of the plans that had already been put in place, and the bike trail was one of our primary initiatives. So how is this Reconnecting Communities program supporting our project? So I think it's really important to talk about why this is so important, and really to our Main Street and to our historic district as well. So Old Town has several key historic events that happen in the Old Town Decatur that should really never be forgotten. And this trail seeks to educate users on some of those events, including the Trail of Tears, Civil War, racial segregation, and the Scottsboro Boys Trial. The trail crosses the physical locations of many key historical events. For example, the trail follows the Vine Street in Old Town, where pivotal events of the Scottsboro Boys trial, along with other civil rights cases, took place and will be preserved in a new museum in that historic district. The Scottsboro Boys trial, it spurred Powell versus Alabama and Norris versus Alabama, which were two pivotal Supreme Court trials that led to the right for legal counsel and due process according to the 14th Amendment. So celebrating Early Town with art, which we call CIOTA, is currently working on establishing a museum that preserves that history. And CIOTA recently, they received $890,000 in funding to relocate a home of the Judge James Horton, the judge who presided over Haywood Patterson's second trial, to the new Civil Rights Museum and future Legal Learning Center. The museums will immediately be alongside the proposed trail, and the trail also takes visitors and residents to the First Missionary Baptist Church, which is a church designed by Wallace A. Rayfield, who was America's second African-American architect. And so with so many pivotal civil rights history, the community seeks to establish the Old Town District, which is Decatur's oldest neighborhood, as a civil rights district. And this project will work in tandem with the museum development and support existing community-led historic preservation efforts. So a little bit about the Old Town District. The trail, either as a shared use path or separated on-street facility, will provide Decatur residents and visitors of all ages with a comfortable trail to travel to destinations such as Ingalls Harbor, our Point Mallard Park, schools, neighborhoods, places of employment, places of worship, and community services. Old Town Decatur and the nearby Moulton Heights neighborhood are majority African-American, with a high percentage of aging populations in Old Town Decatur, so residents with disabilities, and over 500 households without a vehicle. According to American Community Survey results, one of the most common disabilities reported was they didn't have transportation. So sections of our Old Town Decatur are part of a naturally occurring retirement community with many longtime residents aging in their homes. So many of the project roadway corridors lack safe transportation options for residents who lack cars and otherwise rely on accessing transit, walking, wheelchair access. So residents of the Old Town Decatur do not have access to public transportation, as buses do not provide public service with the Old Town. So the hundreds of households without access to a vehicle are led to rely on our walking and biking trails. So how does this affect our downtown area? Actually, it's huge, because the trail connects many of our attractions, our shopping, our parks, our restaurants, and it will also allow transportation to some of our local industries. So it's also creating job opportunities as well. And a major portion of this project is in this historic district. And this is really going to be a destination for biking, not just a trail. So with that, many people will come here to use our bike path and will support our local businesses, not to mention reviving the bustling Old Town Historic District. So this is a massive project for us. I will say a lot of people did not think that we would ever get this grant, but I'm like, well, if we don't try, we'll never get it. So we actually ended up getting $18.4 million for this project. So it's substantial, and I mean, it will really change the landscape for that community and also for our Main Street as well. It's going to connect our Point Mallard Water Park and all the way down to Ingalls Pavilion, which is, we have lots of fishing tournaments there, but it's really a huge connector to all of our city. So we're incredibly thankful for the opportunity. And then also I'm working very closely with our grants, the gentleman who handles the grants, because we had to get the city of Decatur on board, obviously, because they were the people who submitted the grant. So he's really now the champion of the project. I just make sure that the community has solid input into what happens. So, and we did get the construction part. And I will say, for a lot of the communities, we would have never been ready to apply for this grant if we didn't already have the plans in place. So we had already done a lot of the planning, so we didn't have to do the design portion. We could actually do the construction because we had prepared properly for this opportunity. So that's a little bit about our project. So thank you for letting me talk about it.
Well, thank you and congratulations. That's such a fantastic award, and it sounds like it's going to be a very worthwhile investment in the community. And I appreciate all of the remarks you share. I think it's such a great example for our Main Street communities, talking both about planning collaboration, but I think your points in this project hits on so many topics that our Main Street communities care about: active transportation, history and storytelling, neighborhood revitalization, and especially as you were talking about investment in a historically Black neighborhood and the connectivity between that and the Main Street. So I appreciate you sharing about that project, and I'm excited to see how it comes to fruition.
Thank you. Me too.
Great. So Andrea, I will pass it over to you next to talk about the RAISE grant implementation in Harrisonburg.
Great, thank you. So I'm Andrea. I'm the executive director of the Accredited Main Street program here in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We are in the Shenandoah Valley, so we're about 2 hours from Washington, D.C. and Richmond. We are a town of 55,000, but we are the home of James Madison University, if you're familiar with that school. So that means 22,000 people in our population are students. So year round, we have about 33. So that gives you kind of an idea of the size of our community. We have a 40-block downtown, and we were lucky enough to get, or our city was lucky enough to get a $14.3 million RAISE grant back in June 2023. So we're still in our design phase right now, and we'll go to the construction phase in 2027. And we will also have a, just want to share my screen. We also have some public engagement since we need to get people on board and help them dream with us and get them involved. So what I'm showing you here is an aerial of our part of our downtown. On the right side of your screen is Main Street. So you'll see we have the decorative sidewalks, we have landscaping, we have the nice crosswalks, we have parking on the street. It's a pleasant place to walk. And so that means that there's a lot more investment on this side of downtown, and we don't really have many vacancies. There's not too many new construction opportunities at this point. So we've been at downtown revitalization for 21 years now, and people who want to be downtown now have to move further away from the core and away from Main Street. So if you look on the other side, this graphic, there's another street, and that's Liberty Street. So that's where we're concentrating the resources that we have from the RAISE grant to help make the Liberty Street corridor look more similar to Main Street's corridor. So Liberty Street is notorious for being a wide, fast roadway, so it's not really enjoyable for people to walk or stroll. It's a very wide street, and at some point the train just cuts right through, and there's not even, the arms that come down, so it kind of feels a little bit like a Wild West out there. Anything goes. So we do have some vacant parcels, some opportunities for development, but this part of our downtown has been certainly slower to develop than the rest of it. So, and that's actually okay with us, because that's just kind of how it goes when you're working on incremental work. You concentrate your activities, and then the economic development benefits radiate out. So we're kind of right where we need to be, and the time really is now for this RAISE grant. So we're definitely very lucky. We're going to remove 1 lane of traffic for auto use, and we're going to have a median with landscaping where it's appropriate and possible, and a dedicated bike lane that will be a 2-way cycle track. So that will be really helpful for our community to slow down that traffic that just speeds right through. They're coming from the poultry plants on one side, and they're headed down to the interstate on the other. So we really need to slow everybody down and get them to see the businesses that they're driving more slowly by, and to encourage more economic opportunity and hopefully some new residential development too. So this is a big opportunity for our community. And we also are a very cycle-friendly community. It feels like everybody but me in this town rides a bike. So it's a big cycling community. And luckily they allow me to stay here, even though I prefer to walk. So I wanted to share that we started in 2019 collaborating with our city to create our first downtown master plan. And we had the complete misfortune to start our public engagement in 2020, just when the pandemic shut everything down. So we moved a lot of our engagement to virtual channels. And so we had this really cool collaborative map that our consultants developed. And if you see here, you can drop a pin and say, this is a problem area. This is a great area in downtown. We want more of this. Or, hey, can you do something about that? And if you notice that there's a concentration of dots, that's the Liberty Street area that people had a lot of opinions about on how we can improve it. So we definitely knew that there was a lot of people who were had a lot to say about improving this area. And then when we were finally able to safely get people together in public, we had this really cool kind of gamification in public engagement to get people's ideas captured on how they want to design our streets. And so we gave them layouts of Liberty Street and little images and things that they could paste or tape on there to redesign the street to be the street that they want to have for quality of life and for the business investor community to have the kind of place where they want to do business. And so this is a really popular activity, including that with children. So we got a lot of perspectives captured here, and over again, traffic calming came up as a big issue, and improving the cycling and walking infrastructure came up repeatedly. So even though our community is not full of urban planners, that's exactly what they were doing. And it was a really iterative process. So we knew we were on the right track. The consultants and the city and Harrisonburg Downtown Renaissance heard loud and clear that this is something that people want. So one of the recommendations that they gave us in our downtown master plan was to go ahead and repurpose one of the lanes on Liberty Street and make it a dedicated cycle track. And what that does is it increases the pedestrian zone. So now you have this nice buffer from the cars, where even though we're building infrastructure for a bike lane, it's creating a much nicer and safer environment for pedestrian activity. So this is going to go a long way to prioritize pedestrians and cyclists over cars, which is what people kept on asking for. We're also going to have bump outs and landscaping, along with new decorative signals, the traffic signals at the intersections. We have a few intersections right now that have no signals, and so you're really just kind of like running for it across the street. So this is going to go a long way for our community. I wanted to show you a before picture, or actually during. This is what it looks like right now on Liberty Street. You can see this is a wide road. There's no parked cars buffer. And unfortunately, that white building that you see is our downtown jail. So we have a few problems with this part of our downtown. So the after is a complete transformation. Now it's going to be a lot more pleasant to walk by our downtown jail. So we feel like this is going to be night and day to really incentivize more development, to make it more attractive for people to build more housing, which there's opportunities for, because we do have some vacant lots, make it safer for walking and biking, and make it safer to drive too, because now when you have one lane, people are going to be driving slower. So luckily for us, Harrisonburg has a great partnership with our city. They were a big part of our downtown master planning process. So they were a part of this entire process with the consultants. So they were completely on board with the recommendations. We also have a grant writer in the city, and he looks out for opportunities all the time, and came across the Raise Grant opportunity, pushed it out there and said, hey, does anyone have a project? And our public works department jumped in and said, yeah, let's look at the downtown master plan. We have an idea that we want to apply for. So we already too had the data from a 2020 traffic analysis. We knew that if we took away one lane of traffic, that the traffic counts, both current and projected, could accommodate the loss of one lane of traffic. So we already had the data. We just needed to have the funding. So with the downtown master plan in place and the Raise grant opportunity, we felt like we had a real good opportunity to jump on this. So Our city contacted us. They took the lead on it. Luckily, we were able to provide some additional information for the grant narrative, looking at economic development opportunities, and also reaching out to over a dozen business owners who wrote letters of support. We also thought of other people who could participate on this, like the Chamber of Commerce and the university that we were able to get more letters of support from. I also wanted to show you, for all the Main Street directors out there, I know sometimes when we ask people for letters of support, they're like, yeah, sure, we'll get around to that, and they never do. So for a while, I would give them bullet points, but then I just started writing a template. And so I create a fill in the blank, and I give them entire sections where they can drop in something that personalizes the ask. But we put that out there, and I got them all back. A few people wrote some completely on their own, which was great, but there was a lot of support in the community. And on the city's end, they contacted our senators and let both of them know that we were applying for this. We got letters of support from them as well. And then when we submitted the application, we let them know that it's in and reminded them of what this could mean for our community and how we can realize the economic development and safety issues that we have in our town. So there was, a fair amount of advocacy and outreach to the downtown and beyond. And I think the application really pushed the safety improvements that are needed and also the economic development potential. We also have some, in the last 5 years, the city has been developing shared use paths and other paths that connect the neighborhoods throughout the entire city. And we didn't have one coming into downtown or connecting into downtown. So this is going to be a big part of that. So this is really more of like a citywide effort. It's not just for downtown. And it's going to hopefully spur more pedestrian activity, cycling activity, and business activity. So we're really looking forward to it and can't wait for 2027.
Andrea, thank you. And kudos to you for all your hard work and congratulations to your community on this project. It looks like it's really going to be a transformative project. And it was really cool to see that visual of how the street will be reconfigured. I think there's a lot to be said about talking about what it'll look like, but then actually seeing what it'll look like really puts like a whole lot of shape to the project. So thanks for showing us that.
Absolutely.
So I want to leave as much time as possible for participants to ask us questions. And I think I'll start with a question here to all of our participants. So Chris, Kim, Rob, Danielle, and Andrea, this is for all of you if you'd like to respond. But maybe could you just start with giving us one of your best recommendation for a potential applicant for either of the grant programs? Like, what's one recommendation you'd give to applicants?
So I can start. I think Andrea hit upon this. One of the things that we see from some of our applicants is that they struggle with getting endorsement letters, that they come in late. And I think, as Andrea mentioned, if you can provide kind of that template and start early, that's been one of those things that I've seen a lot of applicants struggle with in getting that. And it's very important for our program. And I'm sure, as Kim mentioned too, that it's important for their program also to see that collaboration and endorsement from different entities and buy-in.
Yeah, so with the letters of support, what we actually did is we got the committee members we're like, who do you know? And we made a huge list of literally everybody that we knew that should write a letter of support. And then everybody had those certain people that they had to continue to follow up with. So we ended up doing the template as well, but that worked out really well for us to get it done in a fast manner.
Yeah, my one piece of advice would be to, when you're talking about your project, describe it in a way as if no one has ever heard of where you came from. They know nothing about your town. They know nothing about your transportation issues or what you're facing, because the reality is that, the reviewers probably don't know a whole lot about your transportation challenge, and they maybe have never been to your part of the country. And so really, reading it to someone aloud, for the first time is going to be really impactful, because every word is meaningful, and it's taking up useful space. So make sure that you're using that wisely and describing it so that someone who's never been to your area, is not familiar with your challenges, can quickly understand why your project is going to be so impactful and why this money is going to be so needed.
I'll just add to Kim's remarks there. I'd also say, assume your reviewers are not going to be able to read through a long application and sort of pick up subtle clues as to how you're meeting each of the criteria. You should really spell out for each criteria, exactly how you plan to meet it, because the evaluator is going to have something like a checkoff box or something where they need to say, this is how they met this criteria, has how they met that one, and so you really should make it easy for them, because it's difficult otherwise.
And I was just going to thank Chris. It warms my heart to know that you guys read those letters that we spent all that time trying to get to you. And I think we had a lot of documentation that showed that we were ready for this project. We had the traffic analysis already completed. We had the downtown master plan. So I think having some of the backup to show that this wasn't just a shot in the dark, that we have a vision and we have a plan, I hope maybe helped, but it definitely helps our community.
Great, thank you all. And I see that we have a couple questions that are still open. Thank you all for answering the questions as we were going through. I didn't even realize that was going on, so thank you. One of the questions is, our Main Street is also on Highway 64. So Chris, I think this may be for you. Have you experienced a project that has successfully slowed traffic or put semi-trucks on a different route? We're trying to learn from the experiences of others.
I think we've awarded projects that have studied how to handle some of the freight and heavy truck traffic. I don't know that we've awarded any that have diverted them, but I think that would be something that would potentially work with our program. If you want to look through our website, we have all of our awards listed, and see if there's anything that's similar to your situation that we've awarded. It's not ringing a bell right now, but we've only done 2 years of our program, and we're still learning what the potential types of projects are that are out there.
We
Great, thanks
also
for
have
that.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
We
yeah,
have
no,
a
go
major
for it.
highway, and we have semis that run on our bike trail. And so it's kind of like what Andrea was showing you, is making the landscape so that the semis cannot get through easily. That is the way that we're sort of diverting them off of the trail system. So we have major issues with semis as well.
Thanks for that, Danielle. And I'm wondering, this wasn't something that was posed, but for Kim and Chris, some projects might qualify for either of the grants. So how would you determine which is best suited, if it seems possible, under both?
So I would say, at least to highlight for Reconnecting Communities, if you have our bread and butter, as I mentioned, was projects that overcome barriers, either removes the barriers, overcomes it. If you have a good project that has a defined barrier and you have a good idea on how to overcome it and you have good community buy-in, come to RCP. But Kim, I'll let you weigh in on how it fits for AIS.
Sure. I think, all RCP projects are generally eligible for RAISE, but not all RAISE projects are generally eligible for RCP. So we're kind of the broader umbrella, and RCP is a little bit more of a narrowed but special purpose program, if I could use those words. And so I think from our perspective, we would encourage you to apply to both if you're feeling like you could fit in either bucket. We know all of our programs are very competitive. And so, it's completely acceptable to kind of throw your name in both hats and kind of see which one works out. It's really helpful for you to just be transparent with us so that we know kind of who's in the running for both, and we're not, double funding something on accident, but you're absolutely eligible, and it's allowable to apply to both if you feel like you'd be a good fit. I think ours is a little bit more multimodal in nature. Not that your project has to have multiple facets, but we really do try to cater towards a variety of project types. And so sometimes you can bundle a couple of different elements into one application under RAISE because we can fund so much more. So that's just something to maybe consider.
Great. Thank you both for that. And I know we are coming up quick on the top of the hour, so I think I'm going to pose the last question to you all. For those who have asked questions that we haven't gotten to yet, we're collecting them, so we'll follow up with you all offline. But I see a question that says, for communities that have a downtown streetscape master plan, but does not have detailed design, permitting, or construction drawings, is that considered a planning grant? And can you apply for planning and construction? So Chris, I'm thinking this is for you.
Yes. We have flexibility in construction applications. We can fund pre-award or pre-construction activities such as preliminary engineering, design, contracting, NEPA. In planning, we can also fund preliminary engineering. So there's some overlap there. If you don't have funding for construction, and you don't have the permitting and construction drawings, I'd recommend applying for planning. But if you do have funding for construction, I would apply for construction and with those eligible pre-construction activities.
Great. Thank you for that. And I do just want to take this last minute to thank you all for joining us today. I think it's been a really educational and insightful hour. I know we packed a lot in, so thank you all for having your remarks prepared and having really organized thoughts here. I think it really helps for our whole Main Street network on understanding what resources are available for them, and Danielle and Andrea showing what these projects can actually look like on the ground. So thank you all for joining us. We are at the top of the hour, so I think that's where we can end it. Thank you.